Hello and welcome to another episode of Bored at the Right Time. Today we're going to be discussing one of my favorite guilty pleasures, which is the Beatles live at the Hollywood Bowl. Now, I'm kind of remiss in the fact that this is the only official live recording of the Beatles that they ever managed to record. There's lots of, line recordings of, people either bootlegging them or just, like radio stations, recording them and playing them back, at a different date or something like that. So, I mean, we have a ton of Beatles live material out there, but this was recorded for the express purpose of making a live record. There was a lot of technical challenges with this record. First one is obviously Beatles concerts were fucking insane. They couldn't hear themselves. The audience couldn't hear them. It was nuts. So Capitol, I don't even think EMI, which is their record company, but Capitol in the US thought that they would, record a show for a live album. And if you don't know about the difference between the US pressings and the British and the rest of the world's pressings, you should Google it because it's kind of a strange and odd history that I'm sure we could do multiple episodes on. So basically, the US got albums that the rest of the world never did. There were rehashings of songs, and the other thing that they did was they took the singles, so the Beatles would record singles and release, an A and a B side. And in the US, what they did was they took those singles and put them on records, much to the chagrin of the Beatles. And that's probably how the Butcher album came about, because they felt like their albums were being butchered. And that's my interpretation of it. I don't know if there's another reason or official reason, but that's kind of my reasoning behind the Butcher album cover. So anyway, this is the record live at the Hollywood Bowl. And in case you didn't know, that's the Hollywood Bowl. And these are 2 tickets from the 64 and 65 shows. They did 3 shows total at the Hollywood Bowl. They did one in 1964, and they did 2 in 1965, back-to-back days. I think it was the August 29th and the 30th. Yes, I think that's it. So on YouTube, you can find like the actual live full shows of each show. So you can go and listen to those, but this is kind of like George Martin, against his better judgment, was talked into taking a crack at these. What was that, in 1977? 5, 6, 7. So that was 13 years after they had been recorded. Now, there's lots of flaws with this record. One of which is when George Martin did it in 1977, he didn't have access to the original master tapes. He used like a first generation copy. And if you've ever heard this album, it probably could have sounded a little better, but let's be honest, the pandemonium going on, it just wasn't an easy thing to do. So what they did was they sent a mobile recording unit. So what they did was they sent a mobile recording unit over to the Hollywood Bowl, and I believe they had 3 tracks. Most of the recording technology back then, I think the max they had was 3 tracks for outside the studio. The rest, I think they had 4, but still. So what they did was they kind of had to Frankenstein the microphones around to kind of make it work. So I'm guessing, this is my guess, is that the vocals, all the vocal mics are on 1 track. The guitar and I'm guessing the vocals are on 1 track. If I had to do it, I would say the vocals would be on 1 track, all of them. Then the guitars would be on another, and then the bass and the drums would be on the 3rd track. And then you don't need to mic the audience or anything like that, because it's going to bleed from the screaming onto the stage mic. So, I mean, you're not going to have to worry about not picking up the audience. And so anyway, they recorded the 3 shows, and the problem was that the first one of the 1965 shows, Paul's mic wasn't working. So it's like listening to a karaoke version of some of these songs. So anyway, they recorded the 3 shows, and 13 years later, George Martin went and tried to mix those shows into a coherent record album, and we got that with the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl. Okay? And this is a U.S. pressing, an original U.S. pressing. It has an embossed cover. Kind of, you can feel the tickets and the text there. And on the back, you can feel the ticket. They kind of did that. Now, George Martin wrote notes on the back of here, and these are very dated, I would say, because, and he just basically explains that they didn't plan on recording these shows, but, you know, they just did it for posterity's sake. And George Martin wasn't in favor of taping the shows. What he did was he talks about how they sort of worked the album out. They transferred the 3 tracks to multi-tracks. They EQ'd and they tried to polish the tapes, but let's be honest, it really wasn't, you know, garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. And he kind of explains everything that I just said about the tracks mixed together. So basically you had one vocal track. So you can't, you know, put Paul a little higher or John a little higher and lower Paul or anything like. You basically had it cooked together. It's one track. For all you audio engineers out there. Now they have software that can kind of like remix stuff like that, so you can actually make, you could probably have a fader for Paul, a fader for John, and kind of mix it a little bit. And I think that's what they did when they remastered it. But anyway, this is really dated because my youngest daughter, Lucy, now 9 years old, once asked about them. "You used to record them, didn't you, Daddy?" she asked. "Were they as great as the Bay City Rollers?" "Probably not," I replied. "Someday she'll find out." So the fact that, like, you know, the Bay City Rollers have any kind of relationship to the Beatles is kind of a funny thing. So this is the inside of the record, and it's all memorabilia from the shows and a picture of them. I believe that's from the 1964 shows, because in 65 they were wearing the light suits. Okay, so this is an original pressing, and it came with an inner sleeve, kind of an autographed, came with like a fan clubby type of autographed sleeve with the records. And this is what the label looked like. It's green and blue on so it's blue on the first side and green on the second side. And this was mastered by Capitol. Looking at the runout grooves, there's nothing that kind of special about it. So anyway, that's that record. Now, what's special about this is that I have, again, I said this was my guilty pleasure, right? So I have 2 more variations that we're going to be looking at. The first one is the 1977 original Japanese pressing by EMI Odin, and the remaster that came out in 2015. Okay, so let's take a look at this Japanese version first. This is not embossed, but it has much better printing quality than the US version. And the colors look different too. I'm going to hold them up side by side. You can kind of look, see that? Like, I'm not sure. I'm guessing that the Japanese one is the correct color, and this is kind of just what the printer's printed. This is more cream colored. This is more like flesh colored. Okay. So this has an obi. And whenever you see Japanese pressings, this little piece of paper that runs down the side is called an obi. And it is the Japanese word for belt. So it's basically the belt. It goes on the record, and it's a belt. Has the same text and everything, Bay City Rollers, credits, that kind of thing. So we open it, and right away you can tell that the printing is just better. Better high quality, better quality. Most Japanese pressings come with extra material, whether it's a book or a picture book or something, and most of it is in Japanese. But anyway, this came with that. The Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl, and then Japanese, and it comes with the lyrics. They always used to put the lyrics in there. So the first sheet, there's two sheets like this, a double, right? So this one is the lyric sheet. It has the English lyrics and the Japanese lyrics. So you can kind of see on one column it has the English, and the other column it has the Japanese. And then the second is just sort of text. You could probably use one of those apps to translate it. It's probably just a biography of the Beatles, like in case you didn't know, kind of thing. And this actually has a different label. And again, this is, the Japanese vinyl really is much more high quality. Just looking at it, it's shiny, it's glossy. The grooves look really deep. Really nice, even though it's thin. See, it's not 180. They didn't really do that back then. Does not have anything in the runout. Doesn't say like mastered by Capitol or anything, so I'm guessing the mastering is the normal mastering, but this sounds a little cleaner. It just doesn't have any kind of noise the way the US pressing does. And this is side one. You can take a look at the label. It's kind of them singing at the Hollywood Bowl. And the second side is kind of like a faked ticket. It almost looks like a ticket, like a concert ticket with the songs on it. So I took it out of the record and I put it in one of those rice paper Mobile Fidelity sleeves to protect it, as well as the Japanese inner artwork. We will keep that. Kind of put that back over there. Tickets were $5 in 1965. That was probably expensive. So anyway, in 2015, Ron Howard, the director, made a film called 8 Days a Week, The Touring Years. And so what they did was they remastered the Hollywood Bowl shows. And I was like, how could they make it sound any better than it already sounds? Because it's, basically garbage, but it's my guilty pleasure. I love it. So by this time, George Martin had pretty much retired. Even for like the Beatles stuff, he wasn't really doing anything audio-wise. So he kind of, handed the reins over to his son, Giles Martin. And so anyway, they kind of remixed this, and they found the original master tapes. So that's kind of the first thing that they kind of did that's better than what George did. Again, he used the best sources that he had. So they found the original masters, and they kind of used that. And I'm guessing, just by listening to it, I'm guessing they used some digital manipulation to kind of clean up the sound. It definitely has a much crisper, more compressed sound, which isn't a bad thing. But you can definitely hear everything a lot more clearly. And I'm guessing they kind of used some of those plugins that kind of unmix mixed sound, if you get my drift. So they were able to separate, Paul and John onto their own tracks, so they could, adjust the faders accordingly. So you didn't have all of, you weren't reliant on how it was originally mixed by the sound recordist on that day in 1964 or 65. The only thing I kind of am remiss about on this record is they did include 4 bonus tracks, which George Martin could have put on the original record, but I think they were just trying to keep it, like 18 minutes aside. So what they did was they used his original running order, which makes perfect sense, but I really thought they should have mixed in the 4 songs throughout the show, throughout the record, where they probably would have gone in the show. I thought that would have been a much more enjoyable listening experience. You can't do that. I Want to Hold Your Hand, Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby, and Babies in Black. So 2 from 64 and 2 from 65. So anyway, if you look on the track listing, you kind of see the original album was split at Boys. Boys opened the second side. So I think they should have kept the original order. Fade Out during Rollover, after Rollover Beethoven, and the second side would be Boys. And they make a point here, 2016 remix from the original multi-track tapes. Because I guess, again, George Martin kind of got screwed over on that one. So anyway, they have a little bit of George Martin's liner notes here. And I'm kind of curious. I thought these were somewhere, the original liner notes. Maybe they're on the CD. Because the new record has David Fricke, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, I'm sorry, David. They have a bunch of photos that I've never really seen before, so that was pretty cool. Like that, and then they also have liner notes and then credits. And on the inside, they have an inner sleeve from both shows. Here's the 1964 show. It's them bowing. And you could tell because the stage looked different. And then you flip it over to the 65 show, and you could tell that KRLA was quite a big sponsor because their logo was on the station. And KRLA was the radio station out in Los Angeles, and a whole bunch of famous people worked for them. You have Bob Eubanks, Casey Kasem, and if you listen to the original raw recordings of those shows that you could find on YouTube, you'll see that there was an introduction where they kind of came out and did their persona, and Dick Biondi was there. I'm not sure who that is, but that was one of the disc jockeys. And so anyway, that beginning of the show when they're like, and now here they are, the Beatles, that kind of thing, that was those 3 guys introducing the Beatles, and it really is thrilling. If you listen to it, you kind of hear the crowd start going crazy. And then they cut out about, 40 seconds of them tuning, and they just went right into Twist and Shout. So anyway, and if you look here, it's 180. It's really nice and clean. It's shiny looking. The labels are now blue and white with green. I'm not a fan of the new artwork. I really think they kind of phoned it in. I really think this is hideous. I really don't like it. They should have done something better, in my opinion. This is nice inside, but the cover, I know they were trying to tie it in with the film. I'm kind of surprised that this A came out and B looked like this. Anyway, George Martin wrote, "Those of us who were lucky enough to be present at a live Beatles concert, be it in Liverpool, London, New York, Washington, Los Angeles, Tokyo, Sydney, or wherever, will know how amazing, how unique those performances were. It was not just the voice of the Beatles, it was the expression of the young people of the world." Thanks, George. So here you go, my favorite version of the record right here. Okay, that brings another episode to a close. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening to me drone on about my favorite guilty pleasure, the Beatles, live at the Hollywood Bowl. Thanks for watching, and again, if you have this record or have any comments about anything I've said, feel free to leave a comment. And if you're ever so inclined, you can like and subscribe and all that kind of fun stuff. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.